Okay, so California, you think Golden Gate, Hollywood glamour, right?
Definitely. Sunshine, movies, the whole deal.
Exactly. And, for the last few years, a really big green cannabis industry, too, a regulated one.
Mm-hmm. Booming, or at least it seemed that way.
But it's complicated. Beneath the surface, there's this whole other story unfolding about power, influence.
Yeah, about how the actual landscape got shaped. It wasn't just organic growth.
Right. And today, we're taking a deep dive into that, specifically how lobbying, the sort of unseen hands, really changed the game for California cannabis. It was supposed to be about equity, maybe opportunity.
Or at least that was the hope for many people getting into it.
Yeah, and it didn't quite pan out like that for everyone, did it?
Not really, no. The outcomes were pretty mixed.
So our focus today, it's really on those powerful lobbying firms, the ones who left a pretty undeniable mark. We're pulling insights from Nug Notes' big report on this. California Cannabis, the lobby's influence. It paints a pretty compelling picture.
And our mission here, really, is to pull out the key nuggets for you from that material. Help understand the dynamics, the why behind some of the headlines.
And the different viewpoints, too, right? Because there are definitely conflicting ideas about who actually benefited from all this.
Exactly. We'll explore the big players, the key policy decisions that kind of shifted everything, and honestly, the consequences. Some surprising, some pretty devastating for parts of the industry.
An industry that started with so much promise.
Mm-hmm. A lot of promise.
Okay, so where do we even start to unpack this? Our sources point to 2018, right as Gavin Newsom was stepping into the governor's office.
Right. That's a key moment.
And that's when his longtime political ally, Jason Kinney, sets up Axiom Advisors. He spun it out of another big firm, California Strategies.
And this wasn't just like starting a new company. It was strategic.
Totally.
What's really striking, and the sources highlight this, is just how fast Axiom became a central player,
Right.
like almost overnight.
Because of the connection.
Yeah. With direct ties to the new administration, it basically became the go-to place for access in Sacramento if you wanted your voice heard on cannabis policy.
They were the ones to talk to.
Pretty much. Now, this brings up that whole dynamic of standard politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
From one angle, supporters say, look, access is vital in a regulated field like cannabis. You need lobbyists, you need connections to navigate the rules. It's just how it works.
Okay, that's one perspective.
But the critics, they really push back on that. They argue this setup gave the big corporate players a huge advantage, like a head start.
Before the smaller guys even got organized.
Exactly. Before the smaller, often legacy farmers, the folks who'd been growing for years, sometimes generations, before it was legal, before they really had a chance to have their say. It raises that question, does standard politics always lead to fair outcomes? Especially in a brand new market.
Right, especially when the stakes are so high. So Axiom's established, they're influential. Then comes the French Laundry incident.
Yes. November 2020. Peak COVID restrictions.
And suddenly, headlines everywhere. Jason Kinney's birthday dinner, fancy restaurant, Governor Newsom is there.
Yeah, the optics were terrible. Palpable outrage, really, given what everyone else was going through. A huge PR mess for the governor.
You'd think that might hurt Axiom's business, right? All that negative attention.
You would think. But what's really fascinating, and our sources point this out clearly, is that despite the public backlash, Axiom's lobbying income actually jumped by about 25% in the very next quarter.
Wow. So the controversy didn't slow them down financially.
Not according to the numbers. It almost suggests that in that world, perceived access, even controversial access, might be more valuable than positive public opinion.
So how did they explain that jump?
Well, defenders said it was just a coincidence. The market was maturing. More companies simply needed lobbying help anyway, growing pains of the industry.
Yeah.
But opponents saw it very differently. They pointed to it as basically proof that those personal relationships, that inside track, could effectively buy advantages, a sign of how intertwined politics and big business had become.
Which really challenges that idea of a level playing field, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If who you know gets you further than the merits of your case, especially in regulation, that's a problem for equity.
So by early 2021, are the big cannabis companies noticing Axiom's clout?
Oh, absolutely. They definitely took notice. It became clear that if you wanted to seriously influence policy, you needed top-tier representation.
And Axiom was seen as that.
Seems so. Companies like Glasshouse Brands and Pacific Stone, big greenhouse operators down in Carpinteria, they retained Axiom. reportedly paying around $12,500 a month.
That's serious money.
It is. And then Weedmaps, the big online cannabis platform, that came on board too. It was a clear signal. Corporate cannabis was investing heavily in shaping the rules.
Okay, so again, two ways to look at this, I guess.
Right. One camp says, hey, this is just business. Heavily regulated industry, you need professional lobbyists. It's a necessary cost of doing business, navigating the maze.
Standard practice in many industries.
True. But the other side, the critics, they saw this as the moment the playing field really tilted, permanently.
How so?
They felt it cemented the advantage for the well-funded corporations, making it even tougher for the smaller, community-based operators, the legacy folks, to compete or even just to stay afloat.
So this lobbying influence wasn't just happening at the state capitol. Did it trickle down?
Definitely. And this is a crucial part that the sources highlight these specific county maneuvers. It shows how that high-level access translated into tangible local policy shifts.
Okay, give us an example.
Let's look at Monterey County. Suddenly, permits get capped. But not just capped. They were limited specifically to pre-2016 greenhouses.
Pre-2016. Why that specific date?
Well, guess who was in the process of buying up facilities that just happened to meet that exact criterion?
Let me guess. A major player.
Harborside, a big name. And the impact was immediate. It basically blocked out a lot of the legacy growers, people who owned land but didn't have that specific type of older infrastructure ready to go. They couldn't easily expand or get permitted under these new, very specific rules.
Wow, so it looked tailored. What about other places?
Then you have Santa Barbara County. Here, consultants from California Strategies, remember, the firm Axiom spun out of, were allegedly involved in drafting letters for county supervisors.
Doing what?
These letters apparently helped expand coastal greenhouse cultivation, opening the door for more large-scale grows in that area.
So what was the justification versus the criticism there?
Well, the argument for it was about efficiency and environment. You know, reusing existing agricultural infrastructure, protecting resources, makes sense on one level.
But the critics?
Critics felt these rules seemed almost custom-written to benefit the incumbents, the big guys who already had those coastal facilities. Again, favoring established players over new entrants or smaller legacy farms trying to scale up legally.
So you have this access, these tailored rules. What's the cumulative effect? What happens next?
Scale. Massive scaling up of operations. Our sources really zoom in on Glasshouse Farms as an example.
The one that hired Axiom.
Yep. By late 2024, they had expanded past, get this, 2 million square feet of cultivation space.
2 million square feet. That's enormous.
It's huge, housing something like 750,000 plants. And they reported harvesting over 165,000 pounds of cannabis in just one quarter.
That level of production?
Yeah.
It's almost industrial agriculture?
Exactly. And that kind of mega production inevitably had major ripple effects across the entire market.
Oversupply.
Massive oversupply. And what happens when supply skyrockets and demand doesn't keep pace?
Prices crash.
Bingo! Wholesale flower prices just plummeted. We're talking highs above maybe $2,000 a pound back in 2020, 2021, enough for a small farmer to make a decent living.
And then?
By 2022, prices were hitting lows near $100 to $300 a pound in some cases.
$100. You can't survive on that.
For most small, sun-grown farms, absolutely not, especially when they were already dealing with high taxes, complex regulations, compliance costs. It was devastating.
So what happened to those small farms?
Many were just forced out. They had to surrender their licenses. Or, and this is the tragic irony, some would turn to the illicit market because the legal market was simply unsustainable for them.
So the regulation ended up pushing people back underground.
In some cases, yes. It wasn't just about economics failing. It felt like an erosion of a whole craft, a whole way of life, especially in places like the Emerald Triangle. The human cost, the stress, the financial ruin. It's a big part of this story that the policy debates sometimes miss.
Okay, so in the middle of this price crash and small farms struggling, this idea for a farmers market bill comes up in 2024. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it seemed like a potential lifeline. The basic idea was simple. Let small cultivators sell their cannabis directly to consumers at specific licensed events.
Like a traditional farmers market for produce.
Exactly. Cut out the middlemen, the distributors, the retailers, reduce costs for the farmer, give them direct access to customers who might appreciate craft quality. It sounded like a really elegant, straightforward solution for many.
Seemed vital for survival for some.
That was the argument. Crucial for the survival of the state's heritage craft cannabis industry. But Governor Newsom vetoed the bill.
Vetoed it? Why? What were the arguments against it?
Well, those who supported the veto, including some regulators and potentially some larger industry groups, raised concerns about green market leakage.
Meaning legal cannabis getting diverted into the illegal market.
Right, and potential loss of tax revenue, issues with tracking and control. They worried it would undermine the stability and control of the regulated system they were trying to build.
Okay. Concerns about control.
But the critics of the veto saw it very differently. They argued the state essentially gave up on saving its own heritage craft industry.
Choosing control over supporting the small guys.
That was the feeling. Denying them a crucial pathway to survive legally, potentially pushing them further towards the brink or back underground. It really highlighted that tension between tight regulation and fostering a diverse, small business-friendly market.
So after all this, the rise of lobbying, the policy shifts, the market crash, the veto, what's the final picture? What's the legacy here for that California cannabis dream?
Well, the sources are clear. Axiom Advisors, California Strategies, they weren't the only lobbying forces, obviously. It's a complex ecosystem.
Sure.
But their influence, their fingerprints are definitely on some key moments, key decisions that shaped California's regulated market. Their access and strategic advice played a significant role.
And the outcome, the legacy, still debated.
Fiercely debated. You basically have two completely different narratives emerging from this.
Okay, what's narrative number one?
Narrative one, the proponents' view, credits these firms and the consolidation they facilitated with bringing needed investment, stability, maybe even jobs to a chaotic new industry. They see it as, a necessary step towards a mature, legitimate, large-scale market. Rationalization, maybe.
Okay, the maturing market argument.
Right. But then there's the other side. Narrative two.
Which focuses on?
The critics. They paint a much, much harsher picture. They point directly to the collapse of craft cannabis, the bankruptcies, the foreclosures sweeping through regions like the Emerald Triangle.
The human cost we talked about.
Exactly. They even mention mental health crises linked to the financial devastation. For them, the human cost of this specific path of market consolidation, influenced heavily by lobbying, is immense and, frankly, tragic.
Two very different ways of seeing the same history.
Profoundly different. It underscores just how contrasting the outcomes have been.
So wrapping this up, we've journeyed through how California's cannabis market, which started with these ideals of regulation and maybe even equity, became this really complex story. Lobbying, consolidation, winners, losers.
Definitely. From those well-connected firms gaining influence early on, to the specific county rules, the massive price drop, the fight over farmers markets, it's clear the path wasn't smooth and certainly wasn't equitable for everyone involved.
It leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe this is the question for you, our listener, to ponder. When we try to regulate and legitimize new industries, and this applies way beyond cannabis, right?
Yeah.
Think tech, alternative energy, whatever's next.
Yeah, it's a broader pattern.
How do we strike that balance? How do we attract the big investment dollars that governments often want while also protecting the smaller, maybe craft-based businesses, the communities that often hold the heritage and the soul of that industry?
That tension between scale and community.
Exactly. What can other places learn from California's cannabis journey, both the successes and the struggles? It's a conversation that goes way beyond just this one plant, touching on how we want our economies and our communities to actually work.